Hi, I want to talk about tools that drug companies use to get into your medicine cabinet. They don't use pliers and Phillips and regular screwdrivers and claw hammers. We might use those around the house, and I might use a different set of instruments in the office. But when it comes to drug companies, they've got their own tools, and I think you need to know what they are. So I'm going to do a talk here, and there's going to be two big parts. One is going to be weight loss, diabetes, what drugs are out there, and we're specifically going to highlight drugs you might have heard recently about Ozempic, Wegovy, things like that. But then we're going to talk about liver disease and what might be useful for patients who suffer from certain kinds of liver disease. So there'll be two pieces. So let's jump right in. First off, I think the world has been taken by storm regarding GLP-1 drugs that can help with weight loss. GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. Those are drugs that work as a molecule that will have some actions that are similar to insulin in that they'll lower the sugar, but they'll have some vast differences from insulin as well. So GLP-1, and you may have heard of, the first ones that came out were Victoza, and you might have heard of Trulicity, and I'm probably missing some. But the one that's really been in the news lately has been Ozempic, and then there's also Wegovy, but then there's another one too called Rybelsus. So let me just jump in. First off, Novo Nordisk is a large pharmaceutical company that makes a drug, manufactures a drug called semaglutide. Semaglutide. And you spell that S-E-M-A-G-L-U-T-I-D-E, semaglutide. Now, you might know that semaglutide is Ozempic. Semaglutide is the generic name, if you will, and the trade name is Ozempic. But what you might not have realized is that semaglutide is also sold as a drug called Wegovy. And semaglutide is also sold as a drug called Rybelsus. The interesting thing is semaglutide as a molecule is owned by Novo Nordisk. So all of those products I just mentioned are all the products of Novo Nordisk. Ozempic, Wegovy, Rybelsus. All of those are Novo Nordisk products, and they will help a lot of people. But it's important to realize the strategy the drug company uses in order to sell their product. Oh, by the way, roughly how much for the cash-paying person is Ozempic or Wegovy per month? $1,000 a month. And so that's what they are costing approximately. So are Wegovy and Ozempic the same drug? Well, yes, they are the same drug. They're sold under different brand names. And the difference, the big difference, is the amount of drug in each pen. And this is important, what they've been approved for. We need to talk about that. So semaglutide, under the brand name Ozempic, was approved in 2017 as a treatment for type 2 diabetes. Now, in 2019, 2 years later, Novo Nordisk's product Rybelsus was also approved for type 2 diabetes, but Rybelsus was a once-a-day oral medicine, a pill you take once a day rather than an injection once a week, as with Ozempic. And then 2 years after that, in 2021, Novo Nordisk got the indication, the approval by the FDA for their semaglutide to be packaged as Wegovy, and that was approved as a weight loss medicine. But they're all the same drug. Ozempic, Rybelsus, Wegovy. Now, so now we know that Ozempic is used for type 2 diabetes, and it's also indicated to reduce the risk for people who have type 2 diabetes and heart disease. But always has to do something to do with sugar, Ozempic. But again, Wegovy was weight loss. And just to brush up on how many American adults are overweight, 70%, 70, more than 2/3. How many are obese with a BMI of 30 or greater? 40% or 42%, give or take, depending upon what source you're looking at. So we know that this is a huge market. Weight loss is a huge market. So Ozempic is indicated for type 2 diabetes, but is it being used outside of that? Sure. Ozempic is used for weight loss, even though it doesn't have the indication. But its lookalike drug, Wegovy, does have that indication. So doctors are comfortable doing that. Plus, doctors do a lot of off-label prescribing. So we know now that we have 3 different products, all marketed under different names by Novo Nordisk. Just within the last year and 3 months, Novo Nordisk announced that the FDA had approved Rybelsus. Now, that's the one that was approved in 2019. It's an oral tablet once a day. They had approved it for type 2 diabetes, not as a second or third line intervention for doctors to use, but as a first line option. This was a tool that the pharmaceutical companies use. When they can get something approved, that's one step. And the key pieces would be efficacy and safety. But when they can start to expand the use, that's where it gets good. And now in January of 2023, the news was provided by Novo Nordisk that they had been indicated as a first-line option. So you didn't have to try maybe a generic drug like metformin or glipizide or Actos to treat type 2 diabetes. You could jump right away. Right away you could go to Rybelsus. So it's a first-line drug. That's a big deal. Now you're talking about a lot more people. The news article said, people living with type 2 diabetes can now take Rybelsus as initial therapy. And it came out, the Food and Drug Administration approved a label update for Rybelsus. Now it's a first-line treatment option. Okay, so now they're humming. Novo Nordisk works with health insurance providers to ensure broad insurance coverage and access to Rybelsus. They want patients to be able to access it. So how do they do that? For eligible, commercially insured patients, they provide coupons and various marketing packages so that you can literally get Rybelsus. If you're an eligible, commercially insured patient, you can get it for $10 for up to a 1 to 3 month prescription. Now, if you're on Medicare or medical assistance or you're uninsured, you might feel like, gee, you really need access to this drug. Too bad for you. A lot of these coupon programs, a lot of these, if you will, access marketing tools, it's only available really for eligible commercially insured. Why is that? Well, the pharmaceutical company knows full well that at some point in time, they can withdraw these wonderful packages where you're only paying $10 for 3 months. And now they got you because now you really like it and your diabetes is well controlled or you're losing weight or whatever. And so now they got you stuck. And so they can pull it off. And now you're going to go to your insurance company and say, hey, I want you to pay the bill and I don't want to pay more than $10. That's where they start to get closer to that $5,000 to $10,000 to $12,000 per year, and they'll get your insurance company to pay for it. Now remember, Rybelsus is the oral agent that you use. It's also semaglutide, just like Ozempic and just like Wegovy. But Rybelsus does have some side effects. It does cause thyroid tumors. It can cause thyroid cancer. So it's not absolutely benign. I think it's also important to realize that all of the semaglutide drugs can indeed cause GI problems, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation. But Ozempic and Wegovy have also been listed as potentially causing pancreatitis, hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, kidney injury, diabetic retinopathy, where the diabetes affects your vision, the retina, so you can't see as well, and severe allergic reactions. So semaglutide does have some issues in terms of side effects. So that's sort of the situation. So you can see that Novo Nordisk is out there trying to make sure that they can cover as many bases. So they put this drug out for diabetes. They put this drug out for weight loss. They put this drug out for diabetes, but this one's oral. And then they get it to first line status, so they don't have to use second or third. They don't have to wait for a doctor to judge along with their patient that the drug that they tried initially, maybe a cheap generic drug like metformin or glipizide, that isn't doing what we wanted. So boom, you don't have to wait for that. You can go straight away and use Rybelsus. Novo Nordisk's Wegovy came out, and recently it was announced that they won FDA approval for cutting heart disease risks. So now Wegovy was the semaglutide molecule that was approved for weight loss. And that was basically people who are overweight with a BMI of 27 to 30 or obese greater than 30. Now Wegovy got the indication from the FDA for reducing the risk of serious cardiovascular complications in people with obesity and heart disease. So now it's not just obesity that we're going to talk about. Now we can talk about obesity and heart disease. So if you can broaden the conversation so that the drug reps can start talking with physicians and nurses and clinics about, don't just think about Wegovy with weight loss. Think about Wegovy with people who might be a little bit overweight and at risk for heart disease. So this is a big deal. And again, as I said before, about $1,000 per month for both Wegovy and Ozempic. It is important to know that 17% of people in one study receiving Wegovy in the trial had to stop the drug because of GI problems like vomiting and diarrhea. The FDA had looked hard at a landmark study called SELECT, and that was how they expanded the use of Wegovy for reducing heart disease risk. But there was a limitation to the study, and it was its lack of diversity. In this SELECT study, they studied 17,500 people with obesity and heart disease, but 3/4 of the participants were male, and even more than 3/4 were white. And the study only had 4% of participants as Black citizens or Black patients. And this is a problem because we're maybe not getting enough data as to how will these GLP-1 drugs affect Black patients. So that's really what I wanted you to know. You can see that the tools that a pharmaceutical company can use will be, one, get your foot in the door, demonstrate safety and efficacy. Then the next tool would be try to expand what it can be used as. Because if you do that, you get a bigger pool of patients to potentially sell your drug to. Then also remember the coupon program, where take the patients that you most want on your drug, commercially insured people who will pay full boat at some point in time, potentially, and give them a $10 coupon so they can have the drug for up to 3 months for just $10. And then you're really starting to get people enrolled in. You're starting to get some buzz on social media and things like that. This is important. And then you want to always try to sort of, if you don't want to spend the money and the time as a drug company to get the official approval, get some buzz going so that your drug could be used for more things. And that's the second part of the conversation I want to have with you today. Yesterday at the office in the mail, I got this flyer, and it's a glossy color 12-page document. And literally, you could spill a little water on it and just wipe it off. It's really quite a high-quality paper. I don't know what this 12-page document would cost, but it says, getting ahead of non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Stay with me here. I'll try to simplify it. And what I say about the liver disease over the next 5 to 10 minutes, this is just my general impression. I'm not trying to be your doctor. This is, I want to be limited here. I'm not giving you medical advice, and I might be in error on a couple of my comments. I'm just giving you my impression as a doctor in the trenches for 40 years as to how I see it. Here's the deal. With liver disease, there's all kinds of liver diseases. But when I do a physical, if I do a general health panel, I'll get about 6 different tests that relate to liver function. Of those, 2 of them are AST and ALT, and those are transaminase proteins. Well, if they're elevated, that gets my attention. So AST and ALT can both be elevated from a variety of disease states, but also drugs. One of the big drugs that we use that might cause ALT or AST elevation would be statin drugs, Lipitor, Crestor, drugs to lower your cholesterol. But we also see AST and ALT elevated in benign conditions. And for many years, what we'll do is we'll get these abnormal liver enzymes. We don't want to miss anything. So we'll tell the patient, listen, we're going to do an ultrasound of your liver. We'll do an ultrasound of the liver, and the ultrasound will show little fatty fingers or little fingers of fat or adipose tissue interspersed throughout the liver. We call that fatty liver disease. Now, fatty liver disease doesn't occur in just people who are obese. It can occur in people who are skinny as a rail. I can have fatty liver disease too, and my BMI is probably somewhere around 24. But fatty liver disease, we worry about it because sometimes it's benign and nothing to worry about, really. But there are other times where it's a problem. And there might be other times where it's simply a step on the way to becoming a problem. If we see fatty liver disease associated with abusive alcohol use, now we got a problem. And that's why we called it, for so many years, we called it NAFLD. And you'll see that on charts. NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. In other words, it's fatty liver disease, it's not related to alcohol, and it's associated with a couple of elevated liver enzymes, and we'll periodically check those enzymes, but we don't get too worried about it. Now, if fatty liver disease is nothing but a step along the way to a more significant condition called NASH, N-A-S-H, which is non-alcoholic, not related to alcohol abuse, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. Steato means fatty tissue or adipose liver tissue. Steato, and then hepatitis means inflammation of the liver. So in this situation, we're not talking about a benign condition where all you're really seeing is an elevated AST and an ALT. You're talking about in a situation that appears to have inflammation of the liver associated with adipose tissue, fatty liver, and it's not related to alcohol. Now, NASH, N-A-S-H, has the potential to get worse and worse, and ultimately can culminate in serious liver conditions, even liver failure. So that's sort of the backdrop. So I see a lot of patients every year, do my physical exams every once in a while, get elevated AST and ALT. We call them elevated liver function tests. And I say, okay, how deep do we have to go in this workup? How big a problem is this? And so for me, a lot of times I'm asking, how much alcohol do you use? How much Tylenol do you use? I look at the medications a person's on. Tylenol can increase your liver enzymes. I look at the other medicines a person's on to see if I might have that patient on a drug that could be causing increased ALT, AST. I'm looking for Lipitor. I'm looking for Crestor. I'm looking to see if anything changed. Did they have a recent bout of hepatitis? Did they have a recent virus? Did they have recent mono? I'm looking at all those things. What I want to do is I want to make sure that this patient isn't on the way to developing NASH, N-A-S-H, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis. In other words, an inflammatory condition of the liver, which can be a real problem. So that brings me to receiving this yesterday. This is an impressive document, and it says, getting ahead of non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, or NASH. So heretofore, I'm going to go ahead and just say NASH from now on, so I don't have to say those big words. But as a doctor, especially as a primary care doctor, who's not an expert in liver disease, but I treat a lot of it. The experts would be your liver specialists, and frequently these are gastrointestinal residency trained physicians. So I thought, I wonder why I got this. So I looked it over, and I knew what I was looking for. I wanted to know who paid for this, because oftentimes I would just throw this out without even looking at it. But when I got this yesterday, I got it mailed to me under the auspices of the American Academy of Family Practice. Now, I'm a member of the American Academy of Family Practice, AAFP. This is a sound organization that does many good things, and they also have a close relationship with the American Board of Family Medicine. And that's how I keep my board certification in family medicine. I take exams, I report my continuing medical education, I pay them fees, somewhere around $1,000 over a period of a cycle. These are the things that I do. So I looked, and here it says, this activity. And you say, well, why are you even paying attention to it? Well, this activity, if I read this and take a little test, I get CME credits. So it goes towards satisfying my requirements that I need in order to keep my license and to keep my American Board of Family Medicine certification. So this is a way for me to get free, cheap, easy CME credits. That's a cool deal. So I said, well, who's paying for this? You guessed it. Novo Nordisk. Now, I just got done talking about Novo Nordisk, and there are 3 versions of semaglutide. But now they're paying for this. So what are they paying for here? They don't report that. But I'm going to guess that they're paying for the production and mailing costs of this. I'm going to guess they're paying the American Academy of Family Practice some chunk of money to manage it and to provide accreditation for continuing medical education. And there's also authors of this document, Dr. Sanyal and Dr. Shubrook. And I'm going to guess that they might have received some sort of stipend as well. So now we know who paid for it. Novo Nordisk. So I thought, why is Novo Nordisk paying a lot of money, in the millions of dollars, I'm sure, for a big article brochure with color graphs and all that regarding NASH? So I went to my computer and I put in Novo Nordisk and NASH. I wanted to know, what's the connection? The first article that jumped out at me was by Kevin Dunleavy in Pharma. And here it is. And I'll read the title to you. After phase 2 flop, Novo Nordisk says its NASH work is still very much on track. Well, that got my attention. So Novo Nordisk has some NASH work. And I looked. And you know what? Novo Nordisk wants to be able to create an awareness on the part of physicians that NASH, that potentially terrible disease, could benefit if physicians would treat NASH off-label with their GLP-1 drug. Here's what it says under faculty video. So this is my opportunity to go ahead and use the QR code and learn about drugs of the past, the present, and the future that have something to do with inflammation of the liver in connection with fatty liver appendages in the liver. Here's what it says. GLP receptor agonists, or GLP drugs, are recommended for patients with type 2 diabetes and biopsy-proven steatohepatitis. So now I know that semaglutide, whether it's in the form of Ozempic or Wegovy or Rybelsus, they don't have the indication to treat NASH. But now I've got some scholars, Dr. Sanyal and Dr. Shubrook, who are with the Virginia Commonwealth University and the College of Osteopathic Medicine out of Toro University in California. They're saying that we should be thinking about that. Do you see what's happening? This is a tool they're using. I told you that I received this mailer in the mail. This is the American Academy of Family Practice. And they say, this sponsor-developed resource is made available by the AAFP to provide convenient access to information from industry that may be of interest. They're saying it right out. The American Academy of Family Practice is saying, we want to make sure that our members are provided convenient access to information that the industry, what's the industry? The pharmaceutical industry. So they want to do the pharmaceutical industry's bidding. Do you know why that is in part? Because it's harder for pharmaceutical representatives, we used to call them drug reps, to get into our offices because more and more clinics have prohibited drug reps from coming in and having a donut or a cup of coffee or providing lunch with drug reps and doctors or drug reps and nurses and that, because they feel the influence is just too insidious. So pharmaceutical industry had to find a different way to get at you so that they can get into your medicine cabinet. They use the TV, which we have right up there, and if you watch the basketball games and football games, you'll see advertisements for a variety of GLP-1 drugs. But what we're seeing is the pharmaceutical industry is very, very good and very, very clever at how to get into your medicine cabinet. They're sending me documents through my American Academy of Family Practice, which I've been a member of for decades and decades and decades. So it comes under the auspices of that. The AAFP says they just want to make sure that I can know what's going on in the industry. Then I read this article, and it says that phase 2 was a flop for Novo Nordisk data, but Novo Nordisk isn't giving up. They're still going after NASH. Then I read this, and this article tells me that if I wanted to, I could consider using Ozempic or Wegovy or Rybelsus for stay out of hepatitis syndromes. You see what's happening? They may not be using a Phillips screwdriver or a regular screwdriver or a claw hammer or pliers. But Big Pharma has powerful tools, and you will not see it coming. You will see pharmaceutical industries find a way to elevate the awareness of their drug, even as an off-label drug. They know they can't market it that way, but they can pay doctors and they can pay medical organizations to get the information out to me. So the seed is planted in my head. The next time I see an AST and an ALT, and I think that I might be dealing with something more than just a benign, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease syndrome, maybe I should be thinking about a GLP-1 drug. And if I'm going to think of a GLP-1 drug, maybe my brain will turn to the one I hear the most about, the one I see on the TV the most, the one I see in my medical journals, the one I hear my patients talking about, the one I see the most on social media. Go after the semaglutide made by Novo Nordisk, and you'll see it. It'll be out there as Ozempic, Wegovy, and maybe Rybelsus, the oral drug. Folks, I do not have a vendetta against pharmaceutical manufacturers. Without them, the armamentarium that I bring to the table to help you is a lot smaller. But as is so often the case, we have got to follow the money. And if you follow the money from your wallet to the drug company so that you can have these drugs in your medicine cabinet, you will be a better patient, a wiser patient, and you will help your doctor work with you far more effectively, safely, and potentially without unnecessary pills on board. They're getting into your medicine cabinet, and they're using tools that you couldn't possibly know the breadth of. Thanks.